The timeline for avoidant regret is far more complex and variable than most people expect during the no-contact phase. It is influenced by factors ranging from their specific attachment trauma to how you behaved after the breakup, to pure unfortunate circumstances and bad timing that are out of your control. I want to make this video ultra specific in the way they come back. This includes the very real chance they may never experience meaningful regret and they may never return. As much as it hurts to hear that, it is a real possibility. Knowing these specific patterns helps you make informed decisions about your own healing and future, rather than waiting indefinitely for someone who may be psychologically incapable of the emotional growth that genuine regret requires. The immediate post-separation period, relief without regret, 0 to 30 days. In the first month after losing you, most avoidants experience what psychologists call deactivation euphoria, a flood of relief that their attachment system interprets as validation of their decision to end the relationship. During this period, regret is not only absent, but actively suppressed by their psychological defense mechanisms, which are working overtime to justify their choice and protect them from attachment pain. The initial 1 to 7 days typically involve what appears to be complete emotional detachment. They may seem unusually productive, social, or focused on individual pursuits, as their nervous system releases the chronic tension that emotional intimacy created. This isn't callousness, it's their attachment system's immediate response to perceived emotional threat being removed. Days 8 to 21 often bring a honeymoon phase with their newfound independence. They're likely engaging more with friends they may have neglected during the relationship, pursuing hobbies that intimacy had sidelined, and generally feeling validated that their need for emotional space was legitimate. Any thoughts of you during this period are typically framed as relief rather than loss. The 22nd to 30th day window occasionally shows the first cracks in their relief narrative, but these typically manifest as fleeting moments of missing specific aspects of the relationship: your cooking, your organizational skills, the practical benefits you provided, rather than missing you as a person or regretting their emotional unavailability. Crucially, this initial period can extend far longer than 30 days, depending on their specific attachment wounds, their access to distractions, and whether they immediately enter new relationships or sexual connections that provide novelty and validation. Some avoidants can maintain this relief phase for 3 to 6 months or longer, especially if their life circumstances remain stable and engaging. The absence of regret during this period doesn't necessarily predict their long-term emotional trajectory, but it does indicate that any reconciliation attempts during this window are likely to be met with confusion or renewed confirmation that ending the relationship was correct. Your post-breakup behavior during this critical period significantly influences whether and when regret might eventually emerge. The first wave of questioning, doubt before regret, 1 to 6 months. The transition from relief to questioning typically occurs gradually and is often triggered by external circumstances rather than internal emotional processing. This phase involves doubt about their decision before genuine regret develops, representing their first real confrontation with the possibility that they may have made a mistake. The 30 to 90 day window often brings the first real test of their decision, when the novelty of independence wears off and they begin to notice the absence of relationship benefits they had taken for granted. This might include practical support during stress, consistent companionship, or simply having someone who cared about their daily experiences and well-being. Months 2 to 3 frequently coincide with their first attempts to replace what you provided, often through dating apps, casual relationships, or increased social activity. The comparison process that inevitably occurs during these replacement attempts often highlights specific qualities you possess that they're struggling to find elsewhere. However, this recognition typically focuses on your positive traits rather than their role in losing access to them. The 3 to 4 month period often represents a critical juncture where they either double down on their independence narrative or begin to question whether their emotional limitations cost them something valuable. Avoidants who have supportive social networks, engaging careers, or successful casual relationships may continue to feel validated in their choice, while those facing stress, loneliness, or disappointing replacement relationships may begin to experience their first genuine doubts. Months 4 to 6 typically determine whether they'll progress toward actual regret or permanently cement their decision to remain disconnected. This period often coincides with seasonal changes, holidays, or life events that highlight the absence of a stable partnership. Their response to these triggers, whether they seek new distractions or begin to miss your specific presence, often predicts their longer-term emotional trajectory. During this entire phase, their questioning remains largely internal and analytical rather than emotional. They may recognize intellectually that they lost something valuable without yet experiencing the emotional pain that constitutes genuine regret. This distinction is crucial because intellectual recognition doesn't necessarily motivate behavioral change or efforts to reconnect. The phantom partner syndrome. When comparison creates regret 6 to 18 months, the period between 6 months and a year and a half often represents the peak window for avoidant regret, as they've had sufficient time to test their independence while attempting to replace what you provided. This phase is characterized by what therapists call phantom partner syndrome, the tendency to compare every new person to you while gradually idealizing what you offered. The 6 to 9 month window typically involves serious attempts to form new romantic connections, either because their casual relationships aren't providing adequate emotional or practical support, or because external pressure, family, friends, societal expectations motivates them to seek partnership. These attempts often fail to replicate the specific dynamic you provided, highlighting your unique compatibility in ways they couldn't appreciate while taking you for granted. During months 7 through 12, they often encounter potential partners who lack your specific combination of emotional availability and tolerance for their avoidant patterns. They may meet people who are either too demanding of emotional intimacy, triggering their avoidant defenses, or too emotionally distant themselves, failing to provide the secure base they unconsciously needed. This comparison process often generates their first real appreciation for your rare combination of qualities. The 9 to 15 month period frequently coincides with major life stresses, work challenges, family issues, health problems, or significant life transitions that highlight the absence of your emotional support and partnership. Unlike the intellectual recognition of earlier phases, these experiences often trigger genuine emotional longing for the specific comfort and stability you provided. Months 12 to 18 represent the peak regret window for avoidants who are psychologically capable of experiencing it. By this point, they've typically exhausted the novelty of independence, failed to find adequate replacements for what you offered, and experienced enough life challenges to recognize the practical and emotional value of stable partnership. If regret is going to occur, it most commonly emerges during this time frame. However, this period also represents a critical fork in their psychological development. Some avoidants use this regret as motivation for genuine self-reflection and growth, potentially becoming more emotionally available for future relationships. Others respond to regret by further entrenching their avoidant patterns, convincing themselves that the pain of losing you validates their decision to avoid emotional vulnerability in the future. The intensity and duration of regret during this phase often depends on their access to distractions, their success in other life areas, and their fundamental capacity for emotional growth. Avoidants with strong careers, active social lives, or engaging hobbies may experience regret as background noise rather than a motivating force, while those facing challenges or isolation may find the regret overwhelming and potentially motivating for change. The reality check phase, when regret meets opportunity, 18 months to 3 years. The period between 18 months and 3 years often represents the most psychologically complex phase of avoidant regret, as they simultaneously experience the full weight of what they've lost while confronting the reality of whether they've developed the emotional capacity to handle relationships differently. This phase determines whether regret transforms into growth or hardens into permanent emotional patterns. The 18 to 24-month window typically involves their most intense experience of regret, often triggered by seeing you move forward with your life, enter new relationships, or achieve personal goals that they're not witnessing firsthand. The reality that you're building a life that doesn't include them often creates the most acute sense of loss they're capable of experiencing. During months 20 to 30, many avoidants face what therapists call the growth ultimatum. The recognition that their regret about losing you reflects deeper issues with their capacity for emotional intimacy that extend beyond your specific relationship. This realization can either motivate genuine therapeutic work and personal development or trigger a deeper retreat into emotional isolation as they conclude that intimate relationships are inherently incompatible with their psychological makeup. The 2 to 2.5 year period often coincides with their attempts to address their attachment issues, either through therapy, self-help work, or conscious efforts to develop emotional availability with new partners. Their success or failure during these attempts often determines whether their regret about losing you transforms into actual capacity for healthier relationships or remains simply wishful thinking about what might have been. Months 30 to 36 frequently represent their last window for potential reconnection, motivated by genuine growth rather than temporary emotional crisis. If they've done meaningful work on their attachment patterns during their regret phase, this period may involve attempts to reconnect based on demonstrated change rather than promises of future improvement. However, these attempts are relatively rare and should be evaluated based on evidence of sustained emotional development rather than declarations of regret or love. The reality for most avoidants is that regret during this phase doesn't translate into significant behavioral change. While they may intellectually understand what they lost and even feel genuine emotional pain about the loss, their fundamental attachment patterns often remain unchanged. They may regret losing you without developing the capacity to treat future partners differently, creating cycles of regret that don't lead to growth. This phase also often involves their first honest recognition of whether they're psychologically capable of the kind of relationship you wanted and deserved. Some avoidants use their regret as motivation for significant personal development, while others accept their limitations and focus on building lives that don't depend on intimate partnership for fulfillment. The acceptance phase, when regret transforms or disappears 3+ years beyond the 3-year mark, avoidant regret typically either transforms into acceptance and potential wisdom or disappears entirely as they fully integrate their decision and move forward with their lives. This phase represents the long-term resolution of their attachment to you and the relationship for better or worse. Years 3 to 5 often involve what psychologists call narrative integration, where they develop a coherent story about your relationship and its ending that allows them to move forward psychologically. For some avoidants, this narrative includes genuine appreciation for what you offered and regret about their inability to reciprocate appropriately. For others, the narrative focuses on incompatibility and validation of their choice to prioritize independence. The 4 to 7 year window typically represents their final opportunity for reconnection based on genuine emotional growth and development. Avoidants who use their regret as motivation for significant personal work may emerge from this period with genuinely increased capacity for emotional intimacy. However, such transformation is relatively rare and requires sustained commitment to therapeutic work or other forms of personal development that most avoidants find uncomfortable or unnecessary. Beyond 7 years, meaningful regret about losing you typically either becomes integrated wisdom that improves their future relationships without motivating attempts to reconnect with you, or disappears entirely as they fully accept their relationship patterns and build lives that accommodate their emotional limitations. The long-term trajectory of avoidant regret often depends on their life circumstances during this extended period. Avoidants who face significant life challenges, health issues, or major losses may experience renewed appreciation for the value of stable partnership and regret about losing you. Conversely, those who build successful independent lives may view their decision to end the relationship as one of their better life choices. Factors that influence the regret timeline. Multiple variables significantly impact whether, when, and how intensely avoidants experience regret about losing you. Understanding these factors helps explain why some avoidants never experience meaningful regret, while others are haunted by their decision for years. Your specific relationship dynamic plays a crucial role in determining their regret timeline. Avoidants are more likely to experience regret about losing partners who provided significant practical and emotional support while accepting their emotional limitations without constant pressure for change. If your relationship involved frequent conflict about their emotional availability, they may experience relief longer than regret. Their attachment trauma severity directly influences their capacity for regret. Avoidants with severe early childhood neglect or trauma may be psychologically incapable of experiencing genuine regret because it requires emotional vulnerability and self-reflection that their defensive system interprets as dangerous. Those with milder attachment issues may be capable of growth and regret that motivates positive change. The quality of their support system affects how quickly they notice your absence. Avoidants with strong friendships, family relationships, and social connections may not experience the loneliness and practical challenges that often trigger regret. Those who relied heavily on you for emotional regulation and practical support typically notice your absence more quickly and intensely. Their success in replacing what you provided determines whether regret develops or remains dormant. Avoidants who successfully find new partners who accept their emotional limitations while providing similar benefits may never experience significant regret. Those who struggle to find adequate replacements often develop appreciation for your unique combination of qualities. Life stresses and major events can accelerate or delay the regret timeline. Health crises, career challenges, family emergencies, or other significant stresses often highlight the value of stable partnership and may trigger early regret. Conversely, major successes, new opportunities, or positive life changes may delay regret by providing alternative sources of fulfillment and distraction. Their fundamental personality and psychological makeup influences whether they're capable of the self-reflection that regret requires. Some avoidants are naturally introspective and capable of recognizing their role in relationship failures, while others externalize responsibility and focus on partner incompatibility rather than their own emotional limitations. The harsh reality: many avoidants never experience meaningful regret. Perhaps the most important truth about avoidant regret timelines is that a significant percentage of avoidants never experience genuine regret about losing good partners. Their psychological defense mechanisms are specifically designed to prevent the kind of emotional vulnerability and self-reflection that authentic regret requires. Some avoidants immediately reframe relationship endings as evidence of incompatibility rather than personal limitation. They convince themselves that you wanted more emotional availability than any reasonable person should expect, or that your needs were excessive rather than normal relationship requirements. This cognitive reframing protects them from regret while preventing the personal growth that would improve their future relationships. Others experience what might be called superficial regret, missing specific benefits you provided without recognizing their role in losing access to those benefits. They may miss your cooking, your emotional support during stress, or your companionship, while simultaneously maintaining that your expectations for emotional reciprocity were unreasonable. Many avoidants develop what psychologists call defensive superiority, where they interpret their ability to end relationships and move on quickly as evidence of emotional strength rather than limitation. They may feel proud of their independence while viewing people who struggle with relationship loss as weak or overly emotional. The avoidants most likely to never experience meaningful regret are those who successfully build lives that accommodate their emotional limitations while providing adequate fulfillment through career success, friendships, hobbies, or casual relationships. If they can meet their needs for companionship and validation without the emotional vulnerability that intimate partnership requires, they may never miss what they lost by being unable to sustain deeper connection. Timeline variables based on specific circumstances. The regret timeline can vary dramatically based on specific circumstances surrounding your relationship and breakup. Understanding these variables helps set realistic expectations about whether and when regret might occur. Avoidants who initiated the breakup typically experience delayed regret compared to those who were left by partners who finally reached their limit with emotional unavailability. When they choose to end the relationship, they often experience extended relief and validation of their decision before any questioning begins. The reason for the relationship ending significantly influences regret timing. Avoidants who lost partners due to their emotional unavailability may eventually recognize the pattern and experience regret, while those who ended relationships due to external circumstances, career moves, family pressure, etc., may never question their emotional capacity. Your post-breakup behavior dramatically affects their regret timeline. Partners who pursue, plead, or demonstrate emotional distress often reinforce the avoidant's belief that ending the relationship was correct. Those who disappear gracefully and build impressive independent lives often trigger faster recognition of what was lost. The presence or absence of shared social circles influences how quickly they receive information about your post-breakup life. Avoidants who have no access to information about how you're doing may take longer to develop regret, while those who witness your growth and happiness through mutual friends may experience accelerated recognition of their loss. Their relationship history affects their capacity for regret. Serial avoidants with patterns of ending multiple relationships may be less likely to view losing you as significant, while those who rarely form attachments may be more impacted by the loss of a rare connection. What regret actually looks like when it occurs. Understanding what avoidant regret actually looks like helps distinguish between genuine emotional growth and temporary emotional crisis that doesn't represent real change. True regret involves specific psychological and behavioral patterns that indicate authentic recognition of their role in losing something valuable. Genuine regret typically involves accepting responsibility for their emotional limitations rather than blaming relationship incompatibility or external circumstances. They acknowledge that their inability to provide emotional reciprocity rather than your excessive neediness caused the relationship failure. Authentic regret often motivates actual therapeutic work or other forms of personal development aimed at increasing their emotional capacity. They recognize that their regret about losing you reflects deeper issues that will affect their ability to sustain any intimate relationship. Real regret usually includes specific appreciation for qualities you possessed and benefits you provided that they failed to adequately value or reciprocate. They can articulate what made you special rather than just missing the general concept of having a partner. Meaningful regret often coincides with improved treatment of other people in their lives, as they recognize patterns of emotional unavailability that extend beyond romantic relationships. They may become more emotionally present with friends, family members, or colleagues. However, it's crucial to understand that even genuine regret doesn't guarantee change behavior or capacity for healthier relationships. Some avoidants experience profound regret while remaining fundamentally unable to provide the emotional availability that intimate partnership requires. The ultimate timeline reality. The truth about avoidant regret timelines is that they're highly individual and unpredictable, influenced by factors ranging from childhood trauma to current life circumstances to pure chance. While certain windows, 6 to 18 months, 2 to 3 years, represent statistical peaks for regret occurrence, many avoidants never progress through these phases in predictable ways. More importantly, even avoidants who experience genuine regret may never develop the emotional capacity necessary for healthy, intimate relationships. Regret and growth are separate processes, and the presence of one doesn't guarantee the other. The most psychologically healthy approach is to assume that meaningful regret may never occur while focusing on your own healing and growth. If an avoidant genuinely changes and develops emotional availability, they'll demonstrate it through sustained behavioral change rather than promises or declarations of regret. Understanding these timelines serves your emotional healing by providing realistic expectations rather than false hope. Whether an avoidant regrets losing you ultimately matters less than whether you build a life that doesn't depend on their recognition of your worth for your own sense of fulfillment and happiness.